All right, today we're going to dive into one of nature's most beautiful and, frankly, most brilliant strategies, the sexual reproduction of flowering plants. It's a process that fills our world with color, but believe me, the story behind it is even more fascinating. You know, the source material for this whole explainer kicks off with this really simple but profound question. Are we not lucky that plants reproduce sexually? And when you really stop and think about it, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. So much of the beauty we see all around us is a direct result of this very process. I mean, for us, flowers are, well, they're everywhere in our lives, right? They're deeply woven into our human experience. We use them to celebrate life's biggest moments, like a wedding, and to mourn its greatest losses. They're symbols, they're ornaments, they're messengers of our deepest feelings. But here's the thing. From the plant's point of view, none of that matters. Not one bit. A flower isn't there for us. It has a much more fundamental, a much more biological job to do. So what is its real purpose? And it really all comes down to this one single massive evolutionary hurdle. Unlike animals, plants are stationary. They're literally rooted to the spot. And for sexual reproduction, that's a huge problem. I mean, how do you find a partner if you can't move? And that's where the flower comes in. The flower, in all its beauty, isn't just some pretty object. As we're about to see in our first section, it's an evolutionary marvel, a brilliant and incredibly sophisticated solution to the problem of being stuck in one place. So, to really get how this solution works, we've got to pop the hood. In this next section, we're going to dive into the anatomy of reproduction and meet the key male and female players involved in this incredible biological drama. Okay, so this diagram gives you the bird's eye view of the whole operation. A typical flower has both male parts, which we call the stamens, and a female part, the pistil. Let's break those down, and we'll start with the male side of things. So, the stamen, that's the male component. You can think of the anther right at the top as a factory. Its one and only job is to produce and hold thousands upon thousands of these tiny little pollen grains, which carry all the male genetic material. And check this out. These images show you what the pollen actually looks like up close. These aren't just little specks of dust. No way. As you can see, each pollen grain is a marvel of architecture, with these intricate designs that are totally specific to its species. And they're all wrapped in this incredibly durable outer shell called exene, which makes them tough enough to survive a really perilous journey. All right, let's talk about the female side of things. The pistil is this three-part structure. Right at the very top, you've got the stigma, and it's often sticky. Its job is to be the perfect landing platform for any incoming pollen. From there, the style connects down to the ovary, and that's where the precious cargo is housed, the ovules. Now, inside those ovules, a pretty intense process is going down. As this slide shows, it starts with one cell that divides into four. But then, in this kind of dramatic survival of the fittest moment, three of them die off, leaving just one functional survivor. The nucleus of this lone survivor then divides 3 times, creating the final structure we call the embryo sac. After all that work, the female gamete, the egg, is finally ready and waiting. So, we've got the male gamete packaged up in pollen and the female gamete waiting in the ovule. But they're separate. The next big challenge is bringing them together. And that brings us to what's basically the action sequence of this story, solving the pollination puzzle. And that's what pollination is all about. It's just the word for this super important transfer. It's the bridge that closes that physical gap. Since the plant can't just walk its pollen over to another flower, it has to get creative. It has to enlist some outside help. And plants have basically come up with 2 main game plans for this, which you can see compared right here. Some, like grasses, they just play a numbers game. They release just enormous amounts of super lightweight pollen into the wind and hope that a few grains by pure chance land on the large feathery stigmas of a neighbor. But others, they take a much more targeted approach. Most flowering plants, they do something way smarter. They hire couriers. They use these large, colorful, fragrant flowers as basically giant advertisements to attract animals. They offer a reward, usually some sweet nectar, and in exchange, the visiting animal gets dusted with sticky pollen, which it then carries to the very next flower it visits. It's just a beautiful example of coevolution at work. Okay, the pollen made it. It's landed on the stigma. But hold on, the mission is not over yet. We are now arriving at the absolute climax of this story, the moment of fertilization. Now here's what's so cool. The pistil is picky. It's not just going to accept any old pollen that lands on it. Through this really complex chemical conversation, the pistil can recognize if the pollen is from the same species. It's like a biological secret handshake. If the pollen is accepted, it gets the green light to start growing a tube all the way down towards the ovary. And this is where something truly mind-blowing happens. I mean, it's totally unique to flowering plants. It's called double fertilization. See, that pollen tube doesn't just carry one male gamete down, it carries two, and both of them have a critical job to do. So here's the double win in action. The first male gamete fuses with the egg cell, and that creates the zygote, which is the future plant embryo. But the second male gamete fuses with other nuclei in the central cell to create something called the endosperm. Think about how incredibly efficient this is. The plant creates the baby and its packed lunch at the exact same time.
So fertilization is a success. What's next? Well, in our final section, we get to see the big payoff for this whole incredible process, a brand new beginning.
This slide really lays it out perfectly, summarizing the two products of that amazing double fertilization. The zygote starts developing into the embryo. That's the blueprint for the next generation of the plant. And at the exact same time, the endosperm develops into this starchy, nutrient-rich tissue that's going to serve as the embryo's very first meal. And the whole thing just keeps transforming. The ovule, which now contains the embryo and its packed lunch endosperm, matures and hardens into a seed. Meanwhile, the ovary surrounding it starts to swell and ripen, becoming what we know as the fruit. The fruit's main job is to protect that precious seed and, a lot of the time, to entice an animal to come eat it and carry that seed somewhere new. So we kind of end up right back where we started, but now with this much deeper appreciation, right? Every single fruit we eat, every grain we harvest, every colorful landscape we admire, it's all the end product of this microscopic drama. These tiny, intricate processes of pollination and fertilization didn't just allow plants to survive, they've quite literally shaped the world we live in,